Hello and welcome to Northstar Conversations with Will Polston. I'm Will Polston. This is episode 3 of the Your Best Year Yet series that we're doing throughout January. In this episode, we're going to be building on what we spoke about in the last episode, which was creating your North Star to using your North Star trajectory. So this is a super vital tool that I use with all of my clients and use myself on a weekly basis. I say weekly basis, I mean, it kind of folds into everything, as you'll understand as these episodes roll out. And it is essentially a roadmap of your goal. So once we've got clear on what your North Star is, then what we are able to do is plot your trajectory. So what I love to do here is start as far out into the future as we can possibly think about what would you love to have in your life. Now, the great thing about starting so much further out in the future is it gives us the ability to not have to worry about the probability of it's happening. Because for most people, it's not that they don't believe that they can achieve a goal, it's the time frame that's the constriction. So by removing the time frame and putting it as out in the future as we possibly can, then we can start to believe that it's going to be more probable. So for a lot of people, if I said to you, can you run a marathon? They would probably say no, because they're thinking that I'm asking, can you run a marathon today? But if I said, can you run a marathon in the next 5 years? For most people, they'd be thinking, well, 5 years, I mean, there's plenty of time to do loads of training. Yeah, I could do that. But if I said to you, could you run a marathon this afternoon? A lot of people would think, well, no, I probably can't. So it's not whether you believe you can run the marathon in this instance, it's the time frame that's the restriction. So by removing the time frame restriction, it gives us more creative thinking, imagination of what it is that we would love to have in our life. So on a North Star trajectory, imagine a document, and I like to use a Google document, but you can use Word or anything that you want to use. We start by thinking as far out into the future as we possibly can. So in this instance, let's just say, keep it simple, let's just say 20 years out into the future. What would you love to have in your life 20 years from now? Personally, professionally, financially. Imagine if you had Aladdin's lamp. So for anyone that's just listening to this, not watching it, I've grabbed a little Aladdin's lamp. You rub Aladdin's lamp and you said, right, I've got 3 wishes with the genie to have anything I would love personally, professionally, financially. What comes up? And that's the starting point. And that's the great thing about this, is the starting point of your North Star trajectory is just that. It's just the beginning. This is going to be a document that you use that continues to evolve over time. So we go right out into the future. What do we want? It can be vague at this point. It's okay. But what I would encourage you to do is use some degree of subjectivity. So rather than say, I want loads of money, what's loads of money? If you say, I want loads of free time, well, how much free time? What do you want to be doing? If you want to be having having loads of fun, okay, what type of thing would you love to be doing? So being able to drill it down so it's not just subjective, we want to make sure it's really detailed to a point. So detailed to a point. So you might say, I want to own 3 homes. Well, you might not know exactly what town and street they're going to be on, but you might say, I want to own a home, for example, I'm making this up, in the UK, one in a hot country, one in a cold country, right? That's an example. And we're going to go into this in the 7 areas of life. So really start to unpack it. So what would you love to have in terms of your health and fitness? What would you love to have in terms of your family? So what children, grandchildren, what would you like your family dynamics to be? What would you love to have in terms of your social life? So who would you like to be socializing with? What would you like to be doing when you're socializing? What about your attitude? How do you want to think? How do you want to feel? How do you want to act? What would you like your career, profession, or vocation to be? So would you like to be in business, having businesses, sole businesses? What would that look like? As much as you can think about it further out into the future, an empire of businesses. And what about money? So not just what do you want to be earning in terms of income, but your net worth, your investments, what does that look like? And then spiritually, what do you want to think about? What do you want to be doing, feeling from a spiritual perspective as well, or religious, for those of you that may well be religious? What does that look like? Now, once we've done that, we can then start to reverse engineer it. So what I mean by reverse engineer is we take what you've already done, and then I literally will do this if we're doing it on a document, and I would encourage you to do the same. Copy and paste it, and then change the time frame to 10 years and tweak it back to what you want it to be. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that you just halve it, because that's what you would do. 10 years is obviously half of 20 years, but it may well be that compound effects kicks in and it builds up. But that's something you can do, is you tweak it to 10 years, and then from 10 years to 5 years, and 5 years from 3 years, and 3 years to 1 year, which will obviously be 2025. This is the year that we're working on. Then what you'll typically find, if you imagine a funnel, is that typically the further out we go, the broader the goals are. But as we get closer and closer to now, so this funnel is sort of the bottom of the funnel is where we are at today, and the broad end of the funnel is 20 years out from now. The nearer we get to today, the more specific we're getting about certain areas. Then the believability comes in, because we can start going, well, yeah, I know I can achieve this. I know I can do this in a year. That's okay. And that's what we start working towards. So that's what we do to create and reverse engineer. Then once we've done the year, we do the same for Q1. We don't break down every quarter. So Q1 means Q1 of the year. I like to work in calendar years. Some people like to work in their financial year if they're working their business, for example, but I like to work in calendar years. So Q1 is January, February, and March. Where will you be by the end of March? What will you be doing, having your thinking in the 7 areas of life that we've spoken about? And then also, what will we be doing for the month? So January, for example, what does January look like? What would you have completed and have in place by January? What this does by having this all documented down is it enables you to have a really, really clear understanding, a roadmap of what's going on. Now, this isn't set in stone. What happens is this document evolves and develops as you continue to use it on a weekly basis by rereading it, or at the very least rereading the year, the quarter, and the month to see what's going on and the progress that you're making. What I love to do with my Northstar trajectory is I color code the progress I'm making. So for example, if I'm working on January goals, then at the end of each week, or actually for me, it's at the start of each week, I will review the progress I'm making. So I will literally go through on the document, highlight green what is done, highlight amber what's in progress, and highlight red what hasn't been started yet, because that then helps me identify what I need to be prioritizing to ensure that January gets completed how I want it to be completed. Because if I can achieve everything I want to achieve in January, and achieve everything I want to achieve in February, and achieve everything I want to achieve in March, that means Q1 is complete. If I then do the same each month and same each quarter, then the year ends up getting complete how I want it to be. And then if I do that for the year and keep doing that for the next few years, then 3 years gets achieved, and so on and so forth. And what's fascinating about this process is that by starting so far out in the future and working it back, we then start to improve our confidence in our ability that the goals can actually be achieved. And that's what's so beautiful about this process. I never, ever, when I sit down with a client, say I never, ever, very, very, very rarely will I ever suggest goals that I think they should be doing in the initial instance. Because what I want to do is I want to stretch them to the belief of what's possible, to a point that just about feels just maybe within reach. It's going to be a stretch for them. But then when they realize that everything that they wanted to achieve as a stretch gets achieved by following this process, then it enables them and you, by doing this process, to then next time go, wow, this process really works. What happens if I stretched myself even further and I went even more ambitious with what it is that I wanted to achieve? And from that, we are able to really start accelerating. I don't do that in the initial instance, because if you don't believe something is possible at the beginning, then you just will give up on it. You won't make progress towards it. So this is a process that you go through it once or twice, you experience it for yourself, and then it's just a case of trusting the process. So there we go. That's how we set a Northstar trajectory, and will enable you to have a really clear roadmap of goals of what you want to achieve, not just this year, but further out into the future, for Q1 this year and for January. So go ahead, get it done. And then tomorrow I'm going to be sharing with you a little bit more about how to make this your best year yet, as we start talking about the power of values.